Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Kenora Conservative MP Greg Rickford was the eldest of 8 children born into a family in Paris, Ontario. He followed in his grandmother's footsteps and trained to become a nurse. He had a particular passion for serving in remote northern communities, but then he also decided to study law and earn an MBA before he entered the field of politics. Greg Rickford joins me now to talk all about a very busy and active life beyond politics. Greg Rickford, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's great to have you here.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Well, you know, I was when I was doing some research for the show, I noticed in a couple of articles that you referenced your grandpa.
Yeah.
And he seemed to have played a really important role in your life. In fact, you referenced him on the night that you won the election.
Sure did.
And I wonder, how did he influence you? What was he like? What are your memories?
Well, first of all, he's still alive,
yes.
And it's actually him and my grandma. My grandpa, because, you know, as a veteran, served not just our country, but when he came back from the war, he was always considered, him and my grandma, as people who were dedicated to serving their community, serving their church. And I've used that. My parents followed suit in some other ways. So I recognize him as sort of him and my grandma, because she was a nurse and I became a nurse.
Yeah.
And so they were both leaders in my life, heroes, obviously. So I've used them as a reference on a lot of occasions. Why wouldn't you?
Tell me then about the influence that they had on you in terms of, you talk a bit about your grandma having an influence professionally on you, that you followed in her professional footsteps. What other influences did they have on you?
Well, they were just dedicated to family, and you know, my grandpa was a very busy man, still is at 93.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he must have been so thrilled when
Yeah.
he watched you get elected.
Yeah, it was a pretty special moment to get signed in with him over my shoulder. It was great my parents were there too, because they've been stalwarts in my life as well, and they have just loved me unconditionally, and I've traveled a lot and been a lot of places, particularly here in North America, and they've just given me unconditional support and love for that, and you can't ask for much more.
Right. What were your mom and dad, or are your mom and dad like?
Well, they're super people. I mean, I grew up in a house. I'm one of 8 kids.
8 kids?
Yes.
8 kids. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm the oldest.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is, but I cherish it, and my parents actually, over the course of my lifetime, had more than 250 foster kids stay in our home. So we were always a big family, and there was always a lot of love, always a lot of activity, a little bit of conflict every once in a while. I mean, there are 5 of us that are within 6 years of each other, so it was a pretty compact household. But
any twins in there?
There's no twins, no.
Oh my goodness.
But I look fondly back to days where, you know, I would be in Pee Wee, my brother would be in Adam, and my little brother would be in novice hockey, and that would be Saturday mornings from 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 or 6 to noon, depending on how the games were scheduled. So some days my dad would just get up and take us to hockey and come back and pick us up and drop another brother off, or all 3 of us, and we would watch our games. But those are special memories, and you know, I just have a great family, and can't say enough about their importance in my life.
That's great, because I have to imagine that growing up with 8 kids has got to be a recipe for total chaos. And if you can come out of it saying, I had a great childhood, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I did. I had a great childhood, and I love my brothers and sisters dearly, and we live vicariously through each other. A number of my brothers and sisters have big families, and you know, I love being an uncle, and we try to fit activities in, and I don't do as much as I could, perhaps, especially the last couple of years since I've been elected, but we make best efforts and spend time together and try and relax.
Where were you born?
I was born in Paris, Ontario.
Okay. And is most of your family still in that area?
I would say, yeah, Elmira, Kitchener, Paris area. Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much.
Right. And as a kid, were you, being the eldest of 8, were you a pretty serious, straight arrow kid, or were you, what were you like? No?
I probably wouldn't go near the straight as an arrow piece, but, you know, my mom and dad were obviously, you know, younger when I was growing up, so I was, you know, yes, I was good in school, and I played the piano, and I played in sports, and, you know, I was a pretty good profile of your ordinary average, you know, middle-class Canadian kid. And my brothers and sisters generally followed suit. My sister and I are only a year and a month or 2 apart, so we did a lot of stuff together, like playing in piano festivals and different things like that. But I guess ultimately I would be the one that would go on and spend, you know, probably too much time after high school in university, but I kind of led the charge, and you know, my parents had expectations of me that over time you could see them ease up a little bit on the other kids, but I'm so grateful for that exercise, and it certainly benefited me, helped get, you know, some discipline and some focus, and as I say, with the support and love that they give you, it's just a good recipe.
Along with the support and love, did they give you a sense of what they wanted you to be when you grew up?
My mom and dad, in that sense, were very cool people. They, you know, they asked me to, you know, commit to something, whether it was painting a deck or going to school. They said that there was really no middle ground, that you were either going to do it well, or you weren't going to do it at all, or perhaps shouldn't. So my dad would sometimes take me through those exercises. I used painting of the deck because I'll never forget how tedious it was. And,
it still scars you.
Yeah, and you know, but I learned a lot then. And
what did you learn?
Well, I learned that you started a job and you finished it, and that sometimes it would be trying, and you persevered through it, because that's always been the solution for probably mankind in general, not to be overly philosophical, but I think those little lessons taught me things, and you know, my mom and dad just encouraged me, but gave me a lot of flexibility as the oldest child to make decisions about things that I wanted to do, and pursue them with a commitment to completing them, if not excelling in them. So that was a good experience growing up.
Tell me about your role in terms of your siblings. Did you have to care for them too?
Well, they're all great. You know, we help each other out.
You're saying that because there are 7 more of them, aren't you?
And yeah, that's right. I have 4 sisters. If
they
see this, I might have some, particularly my sisters. No, they're all great people. Yeah. Most of us, if not all, are in caring professions, which flow from, you know, the work that my grandparents did on both sides, actually. My mom and dad have had, you know, they're beautiful parents, grandparents on both sides. My dad's mom and dad have passed away, but they were always role models in their own special way. Good community people. My grandma, my dad's mom, was a nursery school teacher. She actually ran her own nursery school in Brantford, Ontario. So if you take a look at the 8 of us, we all teach, or we're, you know, my brother is still in the funeral business. We're all involved in something that makes contact with people and helps them and advocates for them. I think that's a reflection of the way that we were brought up.
What did you want to do when you were a kid? Had you any idea of what your path would hold?
Well, my first was to be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
My second was to be a pilot in the Air Force.
Right.
And my third, I think vaguely, was to be a politician. But I thought that was a hard thing to articulate for me at the time.
Right.
But I can't forget at 10 years old and beyond, carrying the Toronto Star and then the Brantford Expositor up and down, you know, the streets of Paris, Ontario, thinking that these people that were doing this political government stuff was something that I was interested in. But
why? Do you remember why? Like, do you remember what about it as a little kid was interesting to you?
I think it was my grandpa actually and my mom who would fairly consistently, and my dad, engage in political discussions with me when I was young. And you know, it wasn't normal. Kids around me weren't, you know, talking about, you know, about the prime minister of the day or
as
political
kids generally
event.
don't.
As kids generally don't. So all of a sudden at, you know, 11 or 12, I'm having discussions with my family about these kinds of things, and that would kind of continue through my teens. I guess in my late teens, I kind of put it all, you know, your priorities shift in your late teens, for sure. But you know, that was always there. But again, it was a sort of, you know, a raw idea that I had no sense of how I would ever do something like that. So I focused on those two goals until at a, you know, fairly immediate age in my teens, I realized I wouldn't get there.
You did, eh?
Yeah.
You thought you wouldn't get there?
Well, I was in a motorcycle accident when I was 16, and I broke several bones, and obviously I hadn't been a prodigious hockey player, but I loved the game, and I played baseball, and, you know, just loved sports like a lot of my friends, but I had to kind of ease off some of the serious competitive stuff at a key age in my life.
That must have been really traumatic, not just sustaining the injuries, but the impact that having them had on your ambitions.
It did. I mean, I made generally a full recovery, although now as I, you know, begin my 40s, I have a little aches
Trouble
and
getting
pains.
up in the morning.
Yeah, I got to deal with some of those things, but it didn't hamper me afterwards. But the recuperation was substantial, and it used up at least a good year of my life just getting back to what, you know, a normal teen would expect their muscles and their bones to kind of do for them in terms of ordinary average activity, or in my case where I had been used to playing sports with some degree of competition that to get back there. So no becoming the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I still love them with all my heart. And even though I'm cheering for the Los Angeles Kings right now because Mike Richards, of course, is the assistant captain for them, and there's a strong Northwestern Ontario connection.
Sure.
I'll be back for the Leafs in September as soon as training camp opens.
Well, tell me, I'd like to go back to the motorcycle crash. First of all, to know what happened. But then, well, let's talk first about what happened. And were you driving the motorcycle? Or
yeah, it was a three-wheel ATV, and it was after work with a friend of mine, and it was a trail that I was pretty familiar with. But it ended up being a serious accident for me, and the details really aren't important beyond that. But I broke, you know, enough bones to be laid up for a while, and that. You know, that had obviously a huge impact on my life and my family's life, and for at least a short period. But
well, and I also wonder about the long period, because I find sometimes that what happens in life is that something unexpected occurs, and we can recover physically, or we can learn to deal with the, you know, physical toll that it's taken. But psychologically, there's always it can impact us more than we think. So it can leave a lasting, you know, concern about what if it happens again? Can I live through it? Or how will I cope? Or did it do any of that to you?
I think the biggest impression it left, quite frankly, was how precious life is and how quickly it can be taken away. And subsequent to that, of course, I went on to become a nurse and had more than one occasion, as you can imagine, to appreciate different scenarios where your health could impact your life. So that was it, and you know, a fair amount of resilience builds up over years, and you move on. But you know, it happened at a point in time in life where physically and mentally, you're right. You know, you're left with certain impressions. And I think that's the one that I would say I was left with. Yeah.
Now, you went and you talked about nursing. So you are a nurse. We're a nurse. You study law. You're also a lawyer. You have an MBA. You're now a politician. Does that indicate that you lose interest in things quickly, or you can't hold a job, or that you just have this very I joke about that because I joke with my husband who's had a very interesting career as well. I always say to him, man, you just can't keep it.
The answer to the premise of the question is probably no. Nursing has generally anchored two things. One, I graduated with a diploma in nursing in 1989 from the great Mohawk College at Brantford General Hospital. And I was armed with a special diploma that allowed me to travel all over the continent and see great places and work with great people.
And is that what you did?
That's what I did. And so up until...
So you didn't choose a specific place to practice nursing? You kind of took it as a degree that brought you that allowed you to travel and to give care to people?
Well, there's a distinction there. I was a diploma-prepared registered nurse. I would go on to get a degree in nursing, but not until I'd sort of started to flesh out what specialized kind of nursing degree I might want to get, and that would guide where I wanted to go to school.
Right.
So for me, nursing was always something up until a couple of years ago when I resigned my official status with the College of Nurses. I mean, obviously in your heart you feel like you are a nurse, but technically, certainly in the last couple of years, I've had to use it in the past tense. But up until that point, I was always a nurse, all through business school, all through law school, mostly.
You continued to practice?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I practiced or taught, and I celebrated the career in every sense. I mean, it's taken me all over the United States. It's taken me across Western Canada. I've worked in the Arctic Circle, Cambridge Bay, and Arviat, formerly known as Eskimo Point. I've had so many opportunities as a result of choosing that career that it has anchored me essentially. And in fact, I was having lunch with Dr. Judith Shamian, who's a mentor of mine and somebody that I have tremendous respect for. And I've been able to share that with her actually since I've been a politician. She was the vice president in Mount Sinai Hospital when I was there. And, you know, we were talking about why nursing, why law, then politics. And I said, because as a nurse, you just become a great advocate. And that's the central tenet of all three of those professions. So particularly special from nursing, but that's where it's at. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
You know, you made a reference earlier as well to the idea of offering care, of caring professions.
Yeah.
And certainly, in terms of the nursing, that's an obvious caring profession.
Yeah.
In terms of politics, too, I think there's an element of that. You're caring for your constituents.
Yeah.
But
the law thing?
No, I actually think that because you did a lot of your work in First Nations communities.
Yeah.
And that is where there is one of the places in the country where there is a tremendous need for people to be able to go in and provide that type of a resource. So in a way it is also a caring profession.
Yeah.
But I wonder were you practicing as a nurse and practicing as a lawyer at the same time? And if so, how did you possibly balance that?
Well, when I started law school at McGill, obviously very proud of that. I think, did you go to Queen's?
I went to the University of Toronto.
Oh, well, we won't hold that against you then. No.
That's where your hockey team is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. At McGill, every summer I worked as a nurse. Some students chose to go work at law firms. I had some of those opportunities, but I also had a design by then on where I might want to take this. And I ended up, when I finished law school and finished bar school, Catherine, I did Indian residential school work, corporate legal counsel for First Nations communities, many of them in the communities in the riding that I am the member of Parliament for, specialized in a little bit of health law, health corporate law for First Nation health authorities, and developing certain kinds of programs that were important to me and important to the communities as I had identified in retrospect or reflecting on my career. So I kept that up and parlayed all of that into a brief but important legal career in my mind. And then the 2008 election came upon me.
Is that why it was brief?
There we were. That's why it was brief, yeah.
Did you have the intention to run before you threw your hat in the ring, or was it more of a spur of the moment thing?
Well, it was the stars were aligning,
Okay.
I think, as the saying goes.
Because we've established that you had the interest.
Somewhere way back when.
Right.
Yeah, and then, but because I had moved around, even in the riding, I was largely unknown in the towns and cities because I'd spent so many years working up north in isolated and remote communities in the Great Kenora riding. So, it was difficult for me to kind of understand how that could ever be possible. But when I moved to Kenora and started articling and then started practicing law, I was still working in a lot of the isolated communities and getting a profile in Kenora and Dryden and traveling to places like Sioux Lookout and Red Lake, and all of a sudden, as they say, the stars started to align, and I thought, geez, maybe I could, pair these interests together, and it ended up happening.
Are you glad that you did it?
Became a politician? Absolutely. I mean, there's never a dull moment, and it's a hectic pace. But I feel like what we have done in the last 3.5 years has been important for the riding. There are things that I always understood needed to be addressed. And I don't mean that in a partisan way. There were things that I intimately understood about our towns and cities, and I've had a tremendous opportunity to work with mayors and councils and First Nations chiefs on things that were important to them, but also important to me because I had experienced a slightly more nuanced perspective in the riding than perhaps those that had preceded me.
You broke an almost unbroken string of Liberal dominance in your riding. I mean, with the exception of a one election NDP flip since 1924, was it?
Yeah, I think it was 91 years at some point.
So when you decided to run, and knowing that track record, did people tell you that you were given the fact that you have training that could take you anywhere in the world and allow you pretty much to put your foot into 3 very distinct, very good careers, did people tell you were crazy?
Yes, including Greg Rickford. But I had an unmistakable passion for the North, and I had an unmistakable passion for a place that I didn't grow up in, but moved to as a very young man. I mean, I did some work in Toronto and in the United States, but it was all towards Northern nursing. I was totally focused on getting the right kind of experience that would put me in a comfortable place to work in isolated and remote communities. And then, of course, when I came into Kenora in particular for various kinds of training or business in Sioux Lookout, I was like, I just want to be here. This is where I want to live. And so everything, my life inertia, so to speak, just headed towards that. And Northwestern Ontario became an anchor for me. I mean, I worked on small contracts for First Nations Inuit Health Branch in other parts of the country for stints, but by and large, 6, I think, of the 8 years in their aggregate of experience I have in isolated and remote First Nations communities are in my riding.
Why are they so important to you?
Well, I love the outdoors. I don't get enough time to spend there as a politician, unfortunately, but I'm reconciling some of that now. I feel like after 3 years I can manage my time more effectively and reconnect with those activities, but I can't explain it. It's not something that I planned on. I had a curiosity for the North and its vastness, and when I got there, perhaps it's no surprise in retrospect that I loved it. So I ended up staying there.
So much of your time now is spent outside of the riding. I mean, you are here in Ottawa. You've talked about how busy it is. Does it make you regret the decision at all that you love that area, and not to go back to it, but you have chosen something that takes you out of it for a lot of the year? When you could have chosen something that would keep you there full time. Are you? Was it the right decision to make?
Absolutely. I mean, I try to confine my time, obviously, Ottawa, to strictly house business. I'm not a guy that stays here on the weekends. I either go back to the riding.
And how do you go back to the riding?
I fly to Winnipeg, and then I drive to Kenora.
And it takes you how long?
It's about a 2.5-hour drive.
From the airport?
From the Winnipeg airport to the Kenora
okay.
city. Yeah.
Okay.
And if not, I might do some French language training on the odd weekend just to break it up. It is pretty onerous. But I try to get back, and right now, of course, we're almost heading towards the middle of June. I mean, we have long days, and in fact, Friday I'll be heading back to Kenora. I get back in the city about 8:30, and it'll be light out till after 11. So there's lots of time to go jump in the lake and maybe take a few casts off the dock and just get right back into it immediately.
Is that so?
Absolutely.
Those are the things that you can do for yourself that let you relax.
Absolutely. And I've just joined the Lake of the Woods Gun Club, so I'm looking forward to spending some time out there and do some sport shooting, which is another passion of mine and something that, again, I for a long time have just not been able to do.
Yeah. How interesting. Yeah. Talk to me about your life in Ottawa. You say that you get out of here on the weekends and you go back to the riding, but life in Ottawa is busy and probably quite carefully managed in terms of your time and your commitments. What do you do at the end of the day?
Seems like I just kind of go home and go to bed. I mean, I do have a little peer group. Some guys that I call it my peer group. We call each other peers instead of by our name. It's kind of an inside joke, but they'll watch this and they'll know. We make a commitment to each other to go out once a week, and we like to go down to Fat Boys for ribs is our current tradition.
Okay.
And just sort of enjoy each other's company and kind of get outside of the political box. And
are they politicians themselves?
They are, yeah.
Okay.
They're MPs in my caucus, and we've formed a great relationship, and we help each other out in different ways and attend each other's events when we can. And so there
is a bit of a I don't want to, fraternity isn't the right word, but there is a sense that you're not in it alone.
Yeah, these are guys my age who can relate to, a host of different things. I had been playing hockey regularly with the Conservative caucus until a few injuries sort of on ice. Yeah, resurfaced or were aggravated. So I've officially retired for this year, and I'm focusing on some personal fitness, and have always done hot yoga, Bikram yoga, and kind of reconnecting with some of those to sort of put myself in a better position next fall to rejoin the gang. But we enjoy traveling around the country and playing for charities, playing people who just love to beat politicians and, in a good game of hockey. And I play in the riding as well whenever I can. The police, the Ontario Provincial Police, great group of guys, great police service in Northwestern Ontario. We play some events and try to help out local community organizations with fundraisers and whatnot. So those are things that we do outside of, I guess, the political hours. And although I'm not a big fan of the reception circuit after year one, I kind of got out of that. I do attend ones where I think that there's going to be constituents. I guess a meal. I don't really think about it that way, but if there's constituents there, if I have an interest in connecting with the group that's hosting it for one strategic reason or another, always in the best interest of my riding, then I attend. But
it sounds that given the number of things that you've been able to fit into your life so far in terms of professional and personal commitments, that and with your hockey, if you keep practicing the yoga, you never know, you may actually end up getting to play for the Leafs after all. They're getting older and older, the hockey players.
I have an imaginary blue phone by my bed.
Do you?
Yeah,
You're just waiting for it to ring?
Waiting, I guess it would be to hear from Brian Burke, but my expectations have diminished over the years, of course. But I have passions for other sports as well. I love baseball. I was in Dryden on Saturday playing in a baseball game. We've refurbished their pavilion, lit the ball diamonds under Canada's Economic Action Plan, and that city's reconnecting to its baseball roots. I watched baseball games all over North America when I was working as a nurse. I would always get to the stadium many times with my dad, so that was kind of cool.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah. That's great that you've got other options then. I really appreciate that you would take the time to be here today. It's been a pleasure to chat with you and to learn a bit more about you, and I wish you the very best moving forward. Well, I appreciate this opportunity. I just want to say I appreciate connecting with your mom on some special files
thank you.
through the Canadian Nurses Association.
That's
She's a great lady.
Well, she feels the same about you, so it's a pleasure to meet you in person.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.